game, but they were going at it hard, and I'm surprised there wasn't a suspension or something because I felt like there was a dirty hit in that game if I remember correctly.
There
Yeah,
was Tom Wilson on Marcia. So
yeah, yeah, Marcel. So I felt like there should have been a suspension there because it was, and he has the reputation for those kind of hits. So I felt like they would send a message. But
yeah,
other than that, it was a good game. I loved the high scoring of it. It was edge of your seat stuff.
yeah. I thought, quite honestly, game one was the two offenses going at it. Um, there was no the defense was okay on both sides. It wasn't great. Um, I thought that the goaltenders played pretty well. But I thought it was a battle of attrition from the offensive side of things. So we got to see how deadly offensively both teams really, really were. Um, in terms of the defense, like I said, it was mediocre. It was okay. It wasn't like super outstanding or anything like that. Flurry and Holtby I thought were pretty even in game one. There were I think Holtby let in a couple more goals that he should have stopped than Flurry did. I think Flurry actually pretty much every goal I'm not really sure was even his fault in game one. But other than that, I think the game one was pretty even. Um, the commentators were atrocious, by the way. I have to throw that out. The commentators are hardcore against the Vegas Golden Knights. They're for Washington. Um, it's kind of sad to see. I really like even commentary. Um, so game one was awful for that. But anyway, so otherwise, I thought game one was pretty good, pretty exciting, pretty good start to the series. No team, there was no lag in either team. I think there was a little bit of thought in both of our heads. Ryan, I know you made this comment before the series started that Vegas might lag behind a little bit in game one because they've been on a break
Yeah.
coming into game one, and I didn't see any of that. So I don't
I
know.
thought they would because of the break, but they clearly showed up.
Yeah, they did. I think there was a little bit of a lag time within the first 5 minutes, but it wasn't anything super dramatic like we've seen. And I thought, quite honestly, it was a very, very good series game for game one. So that being said, let's do a quick recap of game two.
Oh,
Um,
if I wanted to say one more thing about game one,
yeah, go ahead.
I thought the 5-on-5 hockey was stellar because it looked there was only two power plays between the both of them, and to have 10 goals between 5-on-5 hockey is just incredible.
Yeah, it really was. And quite honestly, thinking about that, I mean, Washington's offense, a lot of it comes from their power play.
Yep.
And for the fact of the matter that there was a lot of 5-on-5 goals was awesome. That was awesome to
Mhm.
see. I thought actually I kind of want to talk about this a little bit from game one. I thought Tom Wilson should have been suspended for that hit.
Yeah.
I think that hit was there's no excuse for it. In fact, there is video evidence of this. I watched this in an interview. Tom Wilson going, "Oh, I thought it was a good play." Um, you're stupid if you think that was a good play. You weren't even paying attention if you were throwing that hit. That was an awful play. That was not a good hockey play. Um, that was that was disgusting. It was just utterly disgusting. Marchessault had to go off the ice, could not return for the game due to concussion protocol. That was awful. And unfortunately, Tom Wilson thinks that it was a good play. I think, quite honestly, I think he should be suspended, potentially even kicked out of the league for stuff like this. But
Yeah.
not a player to be celebrated for any of this. But that being
Kind
said,
of kind of reminds me of that hit against Tyson Berry in 2013-14 playoffs from Cook. or Coil.
Yeah, from
Maybe it was
Coil.
Coil. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Sean Avery or like
Yep.
Andrew Shaw, where they play on edge and they,
They flirt with fire for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, and it's, you know, I'll even go as far as to say, not Bergeron. Who's the other Boston player? I'm blanking on his name right now. Brad Marchand. Even if you want to bring up like a Brad Marchand, I mean, at least Brad Marchand scores goals. What does Tom Wilson do? He just gets penalties. That's all he does. So, I mean, the same thing could be said about Ryan Reeves. But my point is like this position is dying, and unfortunately, for some reason, people want to keep it alive, and the league doesn't want to see them penalize stuff like this, and I think it should be.
Yeah.
So, other than that, I think that was the only atrocious thing that happened in Game 1. Everything else was actually pretty good, pretty clean, pretty standard stuff from a Game 1 series. Let's move on to Game 2. Game 2 in Vegas. So this game was quite honestly a poor performance from Vegas, in my
Yes, I
opinion.
would agree.
Washington came out with jump. They did not stop playing for the entire game. Vegas didn't stop playing really for the entire game either. It was just Vegas had poor attempts on their opportunities, and I know I'll give credit where credit is due. Washington definitely had some factor in that. The only thing is that Vegas, I've seen Vegas play against teams much like Washington in the sense that they're deep and they're strong defensively. And I feel like Vegas should have played much better. And if they were playing their A game and Washington was playing their A game, it would have been a much different story. I thought Fleury stood on his head. Fleury was outstanding. I don't think Fleury has had really a bad game this series at all.
I don't think he's had like there's I don't think he's had a bad game all the playoffs.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's done very well. He has not really. I mean, there's a couple goals here and there that he like should have stopped or whatever. And but I quite honestly, I mean, with the defense that's in front of him right now and the offense that's in front of him, at least that was in front of him in Game 2, he did outstanding. Vegas did make a push at the end of that game. And it was, I mean, the problem was they needed to make that effort of a push the whole game, not just at the end of the game. But it was a good effort, I think, at the end of the game. They took all of third period, I mean, to basically come back. And so it was a good game. Credit to Washington. Ovechkin, Alex Ovechkin finally got his first goal. It was a little bit of a chip goal, not his usual one-timer, but it was a good goal nonetheless. Evgeny Kuznetsov did get injured in this game. I do want to bring that up. It was a clean hit. I didn't think there was any penalty involved for this. But it was a clean hit on Evgeny Kuznetsov from, I forget who hit him actually, from Vegas. But it was a clean hit nonetheless. But Evgeny Kuznetsov did end up getting injured and did not return that game. The next day, he was listed day to day, and he did end up showing up in Game 3, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But he did get injured at the end of that game. So there was that. And then there's a lot of people say most ridiculous save they've ever seen in their life from Braden Holtby. I thought it was a standard save. I've seen saves like that before. Credit to Holtby, he made a good save. I'm not discrediting the save at all. I think it was a good save. However, it was Alex Tuck, if I remember correctly. He needed to lift the puck. If he had lifted the puck, he would be perfectly fine. He shot it right
Yeah,
into his stick.
I agree, but like at the same time, the puck's bouncing. You don't know if he it was on the bounce or whatnot. Like the puck was moving. It's
Fair.
still a difficult play.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not. I'm not. I don't want to pull too much credit away from Braden Holtby, but I'm not gonna give him like save of the year over that. I thought it was a great save. It was definitely a series, an important part of the series. I thought he definitely made the effort to get back. I mean, that play kind of was really strange in the sense that the puck was passed through his blue paint, and for some reason, Braden Holtby didn't stop the puck there. I don't know. That was kind of weird to me. He kind of just was like, "Oh God, it's coming through my crease or whatever." So there's that. But overall, I thought it was a good play by Vegas. Understandable. It's a tough play to make, but I mean, you're in the Stanley Cup final. You got to make the effort at least. And granted, they did try, but it's got to be a little bit better of an effort if you're Vegas. Good job by Holtby, though. So there was that. Trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, I want to talk about Holtby had an interview in Game 2, or after Game 2, and he was asked about the save, and he seemed so confused, or not confused, but just kind of like, oh, I didn't know what was really going on. I just kind of made the save or whatever. His answer was kind of lackadaisical from what I remember. Now, I understand you want to be a goalie, you want to be relaxed. It was kind of a little startling, so to speak. And I believe the NBC sports commentators even made mention of that. They're like, it's kind of startling that he was kind of like, just, oh, it happened.
Well, I mean, I just think he's trying to stay humble and just say, yeah, I made a play.
Fair.
That's it.
I think that's a fair argument. All I'm saying is it was an interesting answer. It wasn't something that I would expect from a goaltender. I'm not saying it has anything to do with his mindset or anything, though.
In press conference, do you see players really brag about like plays that are spectacular to a journalist's eyes or a spectator's eyes? Like they don't brag.
Depends on the athlete, but I mean, okay, in hockey, no, not really. I think here's the difference though. You can, based on their tone, that's all. When I hear an answer, I'm listening to their tone. And I'm not saying like, oh, like, you know, if you listen to LeBron James, like, oh, I made a good play. Like, you don't really hear a lot about that in hockey. So that I agree with. But there is a little bit of a tone thing that I'm listening for when I'm listening to them, especially in the Stanley Cup final, because it kind of sometimes you can hear a mindset, of where they're at in terms of for the next game. You know, how are they preparing for the next game? How are they looking at this? So I don't know. I think there's a little. It's worthy of looking at, but all credit to Holtby. He made the save, so the interview is not super important. And then transition into Game 3, he was outstanding. So, but before I move on to Game 3, what were your thoughts on Game 2?
Well, I'm going to call out the Golden Knights. They sucked on the power play, 1 for 5. 20%. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
You had 39 shots on goal, and you can only manage 2 goals. That's not good enough. So, yeah, I'll give the credit to Fleury. He stood on his head and everything, and he's just not in games 2 and 3. He's just not getting the support that he needs. He needs first line scoring, but from what I think, he got some first line scoring that game too. And then the second, third, and fourth line need to step up their game. They're just not showing up.
Yeah, quite honestly, I mean, James Neal had an outstanding shot in that game. And if you've noticed, from now on, or from that point on, they all started trying to shoot glove hand side on Holtby. But you're right. The rest of them were, Marchessault was basically non-existent. He's been non-existent pretty much this whole series so far. He needs to score goals. He's one of the reasons they got to the final. You have William Karlsson, who had an okay. He had a pretty good goal in game 1, but he hasn't done anything in game 2, and he didn't do anything in game 3. And you have all these players, like you said, lines 3 and lines 4, who were meh. And they were just there. They didn't score. They were there, and that's the difference between Washington and Vegas in that game. So I agree.
Yeah, I couldn't let you not call out Vegas for saying they were bad. They were bad in game 2.
Well, I think well, and that was what I was trying to say is early in game 2 they were bad. They were pretty bad. Or not early in all of game 2 is what I mean to say. All of game 2 they were bad. You're correct. Their defense was awful. Their offense was awful. I thought Fleury was the only shining star in Vegas. That's pretty much where I land. Washington didn't really have to. I thought Washington was still pretty okay, but because Vegas played so bad, they ended up winning. Like, it wasn't anything super spectacular from Washington. So, anyway, that being said, let's move on to game 3. I've made lots of references to game 3 already. But let's jump into game 3. Ryan, do you want to start with game 3?
Yeah, I'll start with game 3. I thought the Capitals defense was stellar this game. They only allowed 22 shots, only 2 power plays compared to 5 in game 2. And Capitals had 26 block shots. Like, that's really stepping up your game, and that says to me that you're looking out for your goaltender. You're not just making the goalie do all the work. And so to have 26 block shots is impressive.
Yeah. And it shows your commitment to win the cup. I think both teams are pretty committed in trying to win the cup. It's just who's more in it, so to speak. So yeah, I agree. Washington definitely did step up their game in game 3.
I think this game's more about Washington than it is about how bad Golden Knights was in game 2.
Yeah. I thought Vegas in game 3 was better, but they were still bad. In game 3, they had too many turnovers. The shots that they were taking were not the great shots that they needed to be taking. They were focused too much on having the defenseman shoot the puck. They needed to have wingers trying to shoot the puck here and there. I'm not against defensemen shooting the puck. It's just pretty much every shot that Vegas had, it was a defenseman shooting the puck. I feel like, and like you said, I mean, they were shooting into Washington players a lot, and because of that, Washington players ended up blocking a lot of those shots. So I thought Fleury this was his worst game out of the 3, and it wasn't really that bad at all. But there were a couple goals that I kind of was like, I thought he could have maybe done a little bit better, but there were still defensive issues involved with a lot of them, or all of them, I should say. So I thought he was decent. Decent in net. Still the bright spot for Vegas in that game.
I'm looking at the forwards, and like James Neal -3 that game. Eric Holla -3. Their second line looks like it's just getting hurt because Holla, Neal, and Perrin were all on the same line during those goals. So that line needs to step up their defense and help out Fleury.
Yeah. I agree. I think the other line that you need to pay attention to is the Marchessault line. So Marchessault, Karlsson, and I forget who the other guy on their line is.
I think it's Reeves.
Is it Reeves?
Yeah,
that line that line actually well, Marcia So, I should actually give credit to Marcia So. He actually was trying that game. He felt like the only player who actually was trying to take shots, was trying to be creative and just shooting the puck whenever he had the opportunity. I got to give him some credit there because I think he actually was trying there. He just didn't convert. And I think Carlson was non-existent and Reeves was just body checking. That's all he did. So
yeah. I think the main point that we're trying to get here is that Vegas really needs to put pucks on the net. Like to have only 22 shots on goal, that's not going to cut it. That's asking too much of Fleury to do. They're asking Fleury to do too much if you're only getting 22 shots on goal, and then almost more than half your shots are into a defenseman or forward. Like that's just not cutting it.
yeah,
And I think that's what we're trying to get at for Vegas is like you guys, good things happen when you put the puck on net. Good things happen,
yeah,
whether it be a rebound, a scrappy goal, what have you. But good things happen.
yeah. That's actually a pretty good summary of what we're trying to say here. Um, I mean, there's so many teams that I feel like that I have been trying to scream into my microphone that what needs to happen is you need to shoot the puck. And to so many teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs that I've been saying that to. And I mean, Tampa Bay Lightning, Toronto Maple Leafs, let's see, Columbus Blue Jackets, let's see, Anaheim Ducks, Nashville Predators, Minnesota Wild. That's 6 teams right there that all could have benefited from shooting the puck.
Mm-hmm.
and Vegas is now in that same spot. So the question is, will they adapt to it? So what do you want to do now, Ryan? Do you want to go into interviews, or do you want to continue? Oh, we should probably talk about Washington first. We haven't talked about Washington. Let's give Washington some credit here in game 3. They played well. They used all their lines. They had depth scoring. Evgeny Kuznetsov got a goal, which is good. If you're a Washington fan, that's good. That means he's not really all that injured. And if he is, it's not affecting his performance that much. Ovechkin got a pretty scrappy goal. It wasn't anything like... It was a good goal from Ovechkin. I thought it was just one of those goals that you don't normally see from him, which was good. I thought honestly 4 lines came out for Washington, desperate to win that game, and they won. And that because they played their game for 60 minutes and they played outstanding. I thought game 3 was the best game Washington has played so far in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I liked Washington's play in game 3, specifically game 3. I think that's where they really showed up. Game 2, I think it was more Vegas's defense that didn't show up, and so I'd give Washington game 3, and then I've been kind of disappointed with Washington, to be honest. If I'm looking back into it, like yeah, they won games 2 and 3, but only game 3 is really when they showed up. If
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
Yeah. No.
And maybe that's not fair to Washington because obviously they got what it took to get games 2 and 3, but I just felt like game 3 is when they showed their prowess.
Well, and the question is, will they flounder after this win?
Yep.
Because I heard this stat. So coming into this game, before they won game 3, they were below 500 at home in the playoffs. And now that they've won this game, they are 500 exactly at home.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really a great stat to have in the playoffs.
Yep.
So we'll see what ends up happening here. I mean, this is kind of one of those things where it's like it's going into the next game. It's anybody's game if they both show up. So, all right. So let's. I want to give Holtby some credit. He played outstanding in this game too. before a
Do you
new
want to
one.
go to interviews, or do you want to do what we think should be like the
Well,
changes that teams should make?
I'm gonna do interviews here. So
Okay.
I think because that will give the viewers or listeners a mindset of what is affecting us going in to the next game. So, I'm gonna pull up here. I think I'm gonna pull up the first interview we're gonna go into is Vegas. Because I
That was
think
game 3
of Game 3, or I'm sorry, of Washington, not
of
Vegas.
Washington.
Yeah, we're gonna go Washington here.
Barry Trotz or
Yeah, let's go with Barry Trotz here. I think that's the most fair interview to start out with. So, for those of you watching, keep in mind this is not our content. This is content from the NHL's website, and you can find all these interviews and whatnot on there. And I believe they did some of these interviews on NBC Sports. If you were watching the games and stayed up past like 12 o'clock at night, but anyway, so these are going to be those interviews. We're gonna start with the Capitals, kind of talk about them since they are ahead in the series here. And
sorry if you heard that music in the background.
You are good, my friend. Your mic's a little loud, but other than that, you're pretty good. So, but that being said, we're gonna talk about the Capitals first. How this is gonna work is we'll watch the whole video, wait for it to end, break it down. I have one player interview for each team and one coach interview for each team. And these are both after Game 3. So it'll give you a little bit of a mindset of where they're at. I did this last year when I talked about the Nashville and Penguins series, Nashville-Pittsburgh. And I thought listening to the interviews brought a lot of insight. It gives a little bit of a tone for those of you, it gives a little bit of a tone to what the team is sensing, what the coaches are doing, what their feelings are. And it gives you an idea of who's more controlled in this environment right now, who's panicking, who's not, stuff like that. And if you remember last year, I said that Nashville, in their interviews, the coach and the players were all kind of like, yeah, whatever. It's, going into Game 7, they were like, oh yeah, it's like Game 1. Well, no, it's not like Game 1. Or not Game 7. They went into Game 6. I'm sorry. But going into Game 6, they were like, oh yeah, we got to treat it like it's Game 1. And I was, comments like that gives you a little bit of a feel of where they're at. So, yeah, so we're gonna talk about Barry Trotz here first. So, Ryan, are you ready, or do you need more time?
No, I'm ready.
All right, so we're gonna start with Barry Trotz here in 3, 2, 1, go.
Coach, when were you sure that Evgeny Kuznetsov was going to be able to play, and what did you think of his performance tonight?
I felt very confident when I was on the plane coming back that he would be playing.
And what did you think of his game tonight?
I thought he was outstanding. What do you think?
Outstanding.
Yeah, I would say that. Yep.
Back left, Alex. Barry, to your left.
Yeah, my other left.
Yeah,
okay.
there you go. Have you noticed or gotten a kick out of the range of emotions Alex seems to be showing on the bench these playoffs?
A little bit. He's very passionate, as everybody knows, and I thought it was sort of the right thing that, in the playoff game, our first victory in the finals at home, that Alex would score the first goal. And I thought that was sort of a little bit of poetic justice, if you will, for all the tough times. I love the goal. We had, I don't know how many chances, we kept it alive, 4, 5, 6 chances maybe to keep that thing alive, and finally it ended up in the back of the net.
Left side, second row.
Barry, what kind of emotional boost does it give the team to see a player like Kuznetsov potentially suffer a serious injury, but then come back in the very next game and play well?
Are you sure it was serious? No, to me, I knew Kuzi would elevate his game. You know, he took a good hit. You know, make light of it. He took a good hit, you know, in that game, and you know, he's doing everything just like everybody else to make sure that we get this thing done.
Third row on the right.
Barry, what was your view of the hit that Brooks took in the second period, the big hit there, and were you at all worried about his possible availability, especially based on his history with the concussions?
No, not at all. At first, obviously, it was one of those reverse hits. When I first looked at it, I thought their player sort of reversed hit him but jumped up, and I think he got more stunned by anything, knocked the wind out of him a little bit. You know, James is really good at it. I've seen him do it a few times, so I'm sure Brooksy has too. So I'm not too concerned. He's fine. No, he was fine. I can't go into that, but he was fine.
Right side, second row, Tom.
Barry, you mentioned seemed like poetic justice that Ovi scored that first goal. His first period, I think he had 8 shot attempts, 3 hits or 2 block shots. Was that kind of the tone-setting period also, even though he didn't score?
Yeah, I think the last couple of games he set the tone. I mean, he's had the, you know, I'm really, you know, as a coach, you want your top players to set the tone. He did. He set the tone with intensity, with physicality. Obviously, he scored a first goal, but he did all the details. I mean, he blocked shots. He got pucks out. He had all those details that go along with what he does. Just score. You know, he scores at a massive rate. And you add all those other little things to his game, and then you're gonna the whole team that's gonna follow that.
Barry,
Left
over
side.
here, sorry. They scored 4 goals on Braden's doorstep in Game 1, and you've taken the front of the net away from them pretty effectively in the last 2 games. What's been the key to that?
I think, really, honestly, that first game we just got to throw it out the window. I think if you really look at us over the course of probably the last 15 playoff games, maybe even more, and then the end of the season, that's the way we play defense. We've locked that down a lot better, and you know, from that you get a lot of commitment. And Game 1 was everybody was out of their mind. Both teams, and Gerard will probably say the same. There's so much energy in that building, and you got 2 franchises who, you know, are wanting to get the prize, and I think there's so much emotion. Everybody was just, as I say, out of their mind a little bit, and you didn't see the true teams in that first game yet, but you saw a fantastic hockey game.
Right side, second row, David.
David Kalen, NHL.com International. The Capitals have been around for more than 40 years. Tonight was the first time that they'd won a Stanley Cup final game on home ice. Are you guys getting a sense of the moment and what this means for this city and these fans that have waited for this kind of thing?
Well, we've been in a lot of moments in the last, 10 years, and I've been here. This is my 4th year, and we've had a lot of moments. Not as many good ones as we'd like, but at the same time, I think everybody recognizes that, if you do the right things and you keep, sort of pounding the rock. There's a lot of pride in our dressing room. There's a lot of pride in this DC area. And, in the past, the past failures, you would feel a lot of anxiety even before you started the playoffs. And I think we've gotten past that as a group. We've gotten past that, hopefully, as a community. And, hopefully we can continue on and hopefully bring something here, and then I think it'll galvanize all the city and all the other sports franchises in this area, because there's some good ones, and I know the baseball guys are all watching us. So
we'll do a few more.
Why don't you start that, Ryan? All right, so I would continue this, but it's a whole 8 minutes long. So
yeah,
I think there were a couple good questions in that. In the Barry Trotz interview here. And I particularly like the one talking about play and how the team is playing. and he kind of referenced, like, you know, if you continue to pound the rock and you continue to you know do your job, so to speak, you're gonna get to where we are. And I think that's a very good that's a good answer. That's a good coach's answer. I thought he was very calm and collected in this interview. This is a very good interview for Barry Trotz. He is very calm and collected. I'm not saying I've ever seen him really be overly emotional or anything like that, or, you know, but he seems like he's in control of his bench. He seems like he's in control of some of the players, like Alexander Ovechkin, Devontae Smith-Pelly, you know, some of the more emotional players on their team. He seems like he's in control. He seems like he knows what he's talking about in the game. It's kind of a shame that it's taken him 4 years to get to the Stanley Cup final, but I think that he has done his job in terms of the Stanley Cup final here. And so far so good for Barry Trotz. And this was a good interview. I think it's a good mindset for the Capitals coach to be in right now. What do you think?
You know, I want to agree, but I think it's how a coach should act. You know,
Fair.
like you shouldn't, like, yeah, it's good to have emotion and stuff, but this is how a coach should act. He should be grounded. He should be level-headed. And it's a 7-game series. You have to realize that. So it's like, this is kind of what I expect.
Yeah.
I mean, but the one thing I wanted to touch on in the interview is I really am annoyed with the whole just upper body injury crap. Like, just tell us the injury and be open. Like the NFL is, the NBA is, baseball, hockey, get with it. Like, just tell us the injury. Stop labeling upper body, lower body, and don't give us a time frame. Like, just be open. Like, stop playing this magic tricks on us. Like, it's stupid.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you in terms of regular season. I'm on the fence with the playoffs. My issue with doing that during the final, especially, is if you release that, like, he has a broken finger, or, like, you know, like a broken hand. Like, I'm making this up, but let's say like Evgeny Kuznetsov had a broken hand, then all the Vegas players are gonna go, I'm gonna go right for that hand. So it's a protection.
That goes both ways, though.
True, but I mean, right now we have, you know, if you're Washington, you have Backstrom, who just got back and he still has his hand injury, and you have Evgeny Kuznetsov, and you know, they know about Backstrom. They don't know about Evgeny Kuznetsov. So I don't know. You can make an argument either way, I think.
I just don't like it. That's my opinion.
I think that's fair. I think it was wrong for that reporter to assume it was serious. There was no inclination that it was a serious injury. I mean, he did get pulled out for the rest of that game, but for all we know, it could have been a concussion protocol. I mean, we really don't know. And go ahead.
See, that's what I'm trying to get at, is like, keeping the media in the dark about these things I just don't think it does anyone good. And maybe it's just the hockey way, and I just gotta be like, hey, it's the hockey way. Don't fight it. That's fine.
Yeah. No, you can make an argument either way, I think. The devil's advocate argument in me is it protects the players more than it helps the media. It's more of a protection thing. So I don't know. But a valid argument. I think, though, getting back to this interview, I think a good interview. How a coach should act is exactly what you said. Is how Barry Trotz is acting, and that's good. He's not frustrated. He doesn't look like he doesn't look anxious in this interview. He doesn't look like he is, you know, oh my God, we won game 3. Now what am I gonna do? You know.
My question is, why are you praising a standard though? Like,
because it's not a standard that it's not a standard that I have seen from a lot of coaches Well, I shouldn't say a lot. It's not a standard that I have seen from some coaches coming into the Stanley
Really?
Cup final. Yes. I think Peter Laviolette, I think he's more emotional than what he lets on. And in his interviews, you kind of get a sense of that. You know, if you get, I mean, you really want to get really kind of go down the rabbit hole, so to speak. You got John Tortorella, who's really emotional. But
yeah.
I mean, there are coaches who are like that. And with Barry Trotz, I feel like he's like this not just in the interviews. I think he's like this in his locker room too, which is good. And with some coaches, you get a sense that they aren't like this in the locker room. And it's not really a standard, in my opinion. I think, like, if you listen to let's see, I mean, if you listen to Pete DeBoer and Coach Sullivan 2 years ago, when the Sharks and the Penguins were playing, Pete DeBoer, you kind of got a sense like he was calm and collected at the microphone for a little bit, but then like you got the sense that when he was in his locker room, he's like just all emotional all over his players. And I don't mean emotional as in like I'm crying kind of deal. I'm talking like screaming at his players and whatnot. And I don't get that sense from Barry Trotz. Now, granted, I feel like Barry Trotz would probably do that in, you know, when he needs to. But I think he's classy as a coach, because that's not every coach is like that. He's classy as a coach, and I feel like he deserves some props just as a coach right now. So,
see, in my opinion, I don't think a standard like that should be praised, because I think that should be the standard, and anyone that doesn't meet that doesn't deserve to be in the NHL.
Fair.
That's my opinion.
I mean, the argument could also be that, like, I mean, I watched Alain Vigneault be the coach of the Rangers for a while, and he was also the head coach of the Canucks for a while too, but I mean, he never looked like he screamed at anything. Like, he was like the opposite of emotional. And Barry Trotz is like in between that. Like, I feel like he's a good balance between the two. He seemed like he was, I don't know. I thought his answers were strong in this, and I think he seems like he's calm and collected on the bench, which is good.
And I don't mean to slam Barry Trotz or anything like that. I just don't think praise is warranted when that should be the standard.
Fair. I agree. I think it should be the standard. I don't think it is. And that's because, well, it's the coaches in general. You don't even get that in a lot of other leagues either. So overall, strong interview. However, let's go over to the Alex Ovechkin and Braden Holtby interview here.
That one is 8-9 minutes as long.
We'll stop like halfway through. I'll wait. I'll let you know. It'll probably be like, it'll probably be like around the 4-minute mark. I'll wait till a question is over, and then I'll tell you to stop. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, for those of you listening, here is the Alex Ovechkin and Braden Holtby interview. I'm going to turn that down for a second so you people can hear and not be blown out in your speakers. So, here we go. Braden Holtby, Alex Ovechkin.
First shift to his first assist on your goal to his goal. How special was it to see that performance come together tonight?
I think it's everybody knows his skill. I think everybody knows how good he is, and it was my mistake. Obviously, I didn't score, but it was nice to have a chance right away to fill the game and get kind of emotion.
Front left, Steven.
It looked like you were more excited to see Kuzi score on that goal than you were on your own goal. What were your emotions like when you saw Kuzi score that goal?
I was emotional when Diva scored too. It's it doesn't matter who scored. It's important, and it gives confidence and gives little room to breathe.
Alex, first Stanley Cup final game here in DC in 2 decades. first win in franchise history. What was the atmosphere like?
The atmosphere was great. How I said, the city is excited, the fans excited, and but again, it's only two. We just have to move forward and don't think about it too much.
Fourth row on the right, Dan.
Alex, what do you think you guys are doing so well to stop them from getting much possession time, to stop them really from getting into the zone clean?
I think we just play simple, and if they have a chance, we have holes over there. So again, I think we just have to play the same way and don't give him much room. Manage the puck well, especially in the neutral zone, and try to create offense in their zone.
Third row on the right, David.
David Kalen. David Kalen, NHL.com International. After a tough first game, you guys played pretty well. Game 2, you played well tonight. Do you both get the sense that this team is improving every night and still building towards something?
Yeah, I mean, I think our mindset's been pretty good all year. Just focusing on the game at hand, putting the one that we just played behind us, moving forward, and I think Game 1 was just a strange game, and I think we did a great job of just leaving it at that, analyzing what we could to see where we could get better, and the guys have done a great job of adjusting, and the commitment level has been outstanding, and in saying that, we need to move forward with that same attitude and take that same philosophy that's got us to this point, and push it forward to Game 4.
Left side, front row.
Alex, is there anything aside from his talent about Kuzi that has let you guys kind of have this connection and that has been so suited for you to be successful?
I think we have solid centers in all lines. You can see when Kuzi get hurt, Lars stepping up and play the big game. You can see how Bigs today play. Like he makes 2 passes, and he's a hard-working guy. But if he have a chance to create, he will, because he have a skill as well. And the Becky is top center in the league, and everybody knows it. So we feel comfortable with all 4 lines and 4 centers.
Fourth row in the center, Sergey.
Sergey Feldman, NHL.com International, for Alex and Braden. You want to enjoy this for what it is and not get too far ahead, but for a moment, can you appreciate the significance this game has and the relationship that you have between the fan base and the team, and how special it is for a fan base that has been waiting a long time for this kind of moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously fun for us to see the city like this and bring that kind of energy and enjoyment, and the fans have been phenomenal. But in saying that, our group as professionals, you get more out of making that sacrifice so everyone can enjoy it. So we're just putting our head down and focusing on Game 4, to keep working towards that big goal.
Okay, go ahead and stop there, Ryan. Okay. So, let's talk about this interview. I thought this interview was actually very it was a very good interview for both these players. Going into Alexander Ovechkin's mindset, you can tell that emotion is his entire mindset going into these games. Being pumped up, being super emotional, and just coming into these games with as much emotion as possible. So I mean, that's clearly his mindset, and you can tell that from his interview, and you can tell that by watching him. Braden Holtby seems like he's very calm and collected, but also there was one point in that interview he seemed like he was dazing off there, which granted he just played a hockey game, so but he seems very relaxed, and kind of not worried about that he's in the final. Alex Ovechkin just seems very serious and very driven, Holtby is very relaxed based off these interviews, in my opinion. What was your thought off of this, Ryan?
You know, I thought the same thing. However, I have a problem with. I don't think media. In general, I don't think media asks the right insightful questions.
Fair.
That really allow like the fans to get into their mindset. What I want to hear is like, what are you gonna do for Game 4? What are you gonna like when this happens? What are you gonna do? Like, I mean, obviously they can't predict what they're gonna do, but I think that those kind of questions, those more direct, like, you made an error here. How are you gonna fix it? Questions are more like more insightful. Like, I would have asked Holtby, what the hell were you thinking on that goal?
Yeah.
That you gave up. Like, you have to know better than that. Like, obviously I wouldn't direct it in that tone or anything, but you have to know that you're better than this.
Right. Yeah.
And
No.
so yes, I like the interviews, but like I have more beef with the media because I don't think they ask the right questions. I don't think they really challenge the players to get deep in themselves.
Yeah. No, I agree. I thought these interviews were very much like, very shallow questions. I even kind of thought that a little bit with some of the coach questions. Like, what's it like to be in the city or whatever, stuff like that. That's okay, whatever. It's not really like, that's not relevant information in my opinion. So I agree. I think the media didn't do a very good job of asking a lot of the questions here. I thought Holtby had very standard generic responses. I thought Ovechkin was very good at just honestly answering straight up. But yeah. Sorry, I had something in my eye for those of you watching. Yeah, so I thought these interviews were good, but I did get a little bit of insight based off the players' responses outside of the media's help. Based off of these interviews, I think. Good interviews all around, but again, you get to see the insight of what's going on here. One thing I want to bring up going into the last set of games here. Alex Ovechkin's emotions can bite him. And he has to be careful of that. The moment they lose, if they end up losing the next 2 games, Alex Ovechkin's emotions, pay attention to them because they will dictate where this Washington team goes, I think. I've watched teams where they ride on emotion and they're coming all excited, all pumped up, and then they lose a couple games and that emotion goes away and then their drive kind of disappears a little bit and that gives the other team the advantage. So all Vegas has to do is win the next game, and then if they win the game after that, it's definitely a huge blow to Washington, and we have to pay attention to the emotions of players like Alexander Ovechkin, Devontae Smith-Pelly, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think other than that, good interview. Now let's move on. Let's talk about let's move on to Vegas here. Do you want to do Gerard Gallant or do you want to do James Neal?
Gerard Gallant.
All right, we're gonna do Gerard Gallant for those of you watching. This one's only a 2-minute interview, so you can tell that the reporters were all about Washington because they had 8 minutes of questions for Washington. Granted, they won Game 3, but still. So we'll watch. I think we'll watch this whole one. Is that okay with you, Ryan?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's only 2 minutes. Pay attention to Gerard Gallant. Pay attention to his answers, and we'll do that. So, we'll go on go. All right. So 3, 2, 1, go.
We'll start front left with Jesse.
Jesse Granger, Las Vegas Sun. This team has breezed through the playoffs to this point, and first time you've lost 2 games in a row, probably the most adversity you've faced. Just what do you say to your team, and how do you regroup for next game?
Just get ready for the next one. That's all you can do. We settled all year. You forget about tonight's game. You get ready for the next one. They were a better team tonight. They deserved to win, and we'll move on.
Front left over here, Coach.
Hi, Gerard. Alex Kirshner with SB Nation. What is it about Ovechkin and Kuznetsov together, other than their obvious talent, that creates problems for a team defense?
Well, they're great players. They're talented players. They're superstars. So.
Third row.
Ken Bolke, Sinbin.Vegas. Do you think the same problems that they created in Game 2 were the problems that they created for you in Game 3?
Who created the team, or
the Capitals created for you?
Not as many, not as much. No, I thought it was more competitive game tonight. But again, they came out in the first period and they set the tone real good, and and again we were chasing from behind again tonight.
Fourth row, left side.
Dennis Bernstein from the fourth period. Gerard, would you classify Game 4 as a must-win for the team?
They're all must-wins.
Stay on the left side, fourth row.
Yeah, Ed Frankovic, WNST. Coach, you guys had a lot of chances. Did you feel that way, and some chances where you missed the net, or?
I felt we had more chances than we did in Game 2. Like we were around the net more, but this just didn't get second and third chances in the rebounds. And Holtby made some good saves and covered some pucks up. But I felt we were more competitive around their net.
Right side, second row.
Luke Fox, Sportsnet. How concerning is the lack of production from your second and third lines? And what are you going to consider some changes heading into the next game?
No, we'll worry about that tomorrow. We'll start to look at stuff tomorrow. And like I said, tonight it was a close hockey game. It was 2-1 late in the period, late in the hockey game. And so, they didn't score a whole lot of goals. We didn't score. Like I said, we got the one goal to make it 2-1, and then they get the unfortunate turnover goal with about 6 minutes left to go. So overall, it was a competitive game. And again, Fleury had to make some good saves. He was the difference for us to stay close.
So sorry about that headphone blowout there for those of you watching. I am very sorry. I muted it really quickly as quickly as I could. Yeah, I went back to a different tab for those of you watching. So we're gonna go to James Neal here in a second, but so that's what the black screen is. But I want to talk about this this interview here. I thought he seemed nervous. Gerard Gallant seemed nervous. And he realized what's at stake with this game that had just been won. I thought, quite honestly, it was an out. He was doing damage control a little bit for this team. I thought the reporters actually asked decent questions in this interview. They were like, what are you going to do for the next game? What are you going to change? What are you going to do for this and that? For Washington, they were all asking about what does it mean to be in the city? And what are your emotions like? And stuff like that. So a little bit different in terms of reporters' questions. Granted, most of them were Las Vegas reporters. But yeah, he seemed nervous, but still calm and collected. We'll see how that translates into the next game. I'm not really quite sure if he knows what he's going to do for the next game or not, based off this interview. He seems a little nervous and confused on what to do, in my opinion, based off this interview. So, Ryan, what were your thoughts?
Personally, I would disagree with you about the nervousness. I thought he was short with the media, but I thought he was just more just mad about the loss than anything. If that was the emotion that you're leading towards identifying, then I would agree with it. It was more angry than anything, and that's what I saw, because you kind of noticed he was short with the media, with his answers. And what I want to say, I also wanted to point out, there's obvious some East Coast bias here.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably, like, East Coast bias, East Coast media bias is a thing. I'll say it again, like, even when it was a Patriots versus Philadelphia or Philadelphia Eagles playoff or Super Bowl, it was all about the Patriots. So there is an East Coast bias. That is a thing, and we need to acknowledge it and try to fix it. But going back to the interview, you know, I was happy with the questions by the media, and I was okay with his answers. Like, I didn't mind them. I thought they were the coaches, what you want to hear from a coach. He was defending his players. He didn't throw anyone under the bus.
Yeah.
What I would have liked, what I was kind of surprised is that he said this game was more competitive.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked by that, because if you notice in game 2 stats, we had the Vegas Knights had 39 shots compared to 22 in game 3.
Yeah.
So and you had 5 power plays in that game too. How could you say it was more competitive or you had more opportunities? Like, no, I would have, if I was a reporter, I would have been like, okay, the stats say something else. So how are you interpreting that you had more opportunities?
Yeah, I agree. I didn't think this game was more competitive than the last game. I thought this game was quite honestly, it was about the same in terms of competitiveness as game 2. In terms of both the levels that both teams kind of showed up at. Washington showed up for a little bit more to be more competitive, and then Vegas showed up to be more competitive. So overall, I kind of think that I kind of think this was a interesting answer from Gerard Gallant. I didn't think it was a very good answer particularly. I think one of the answers that did give me some hope for Gerard Gallant and the Vegas Golden Knights was they asked, was this a must win? And he said they're all must wins. So I thought that was a good answer. That was, he didn't really hesitate too much on that answer. He kind of thought about it for a second. He goes, well, they're all must wins,
Yeah.
I don't know how else to answer that kind of deal. And I think that was a good answer.
Yeah. I mean, every playoff game is a must win. So that should be the answer. That's what I want. If I'm the GM, that's exactly the answer. If I'm telebooking it to him, that's what you're supposed to say. I'm not going to praise him for that.
Yeah.
Same thing about the standard that we talked about, standards of how a coach should do a press interview,
Yeah. No, quite honestly, I thought it was a great interview from Gerard Gallant. There's just one or two questions that I was kind of just
Well, that goes for me too. Being surprised about saying you had more opportunities in game 3 is I think he's just trying to give his team a vote of confidence there.
Yeah. Kind of give his team an idea of hey, I have faith in you guys. You guys can still do this. So,
yeah.
Solid answers all around. Nothing super, what, are you kidding me? I mean, other than the competitive.
Nothing damning.
Yeah. I like that it was short. And yeah, so anyway.
I think that goes to the East Coast bias that we talked about, that it was short. There was no Washington media trying to get some answers into him. I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to also remember the Capitals have been in the league for 40 years. And Vegas, this is their first season. So
well, I think that's even more reason for a Washington reporter to be in the presser.
You would think, yes. But there's more history involved with Washington, so there's a little bit more love from the media in that respect for that. Vegas is, this, I mean, there's no love lost if Vegas doesn't win.
True.
But there's love lost if Washington doesn't win. So it's kind of along those lines. But again, there is East Coast bias, like you said. So, yeah, so there's that. Let's talk about James Neal. This is only 1 minute and 28 seconds. I apologize for those of you listening. This is very quiet, and I hope you guys can hear it. We will repeat some of the stuff for you guys here, but so yeah, we'll talk about this after though. All right, so on go, Ryan. 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, obviously this is a new situation for your group, 2-1. How will you respond as a group?
We'll be fine. We'll regroup and, look at it and get better for next game. I thought we had parts of the game where, we were getting to our game, but still overall, I think we got, a lot more to give.
Why? There are parts, James. Is it something that they're doing, or is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's everything. I think. We're in the finals. It's tight out there. They check hard. And, so for us, I think we just have to try to make it easier on each other and put pucks in good spots and get them back. But we'll dig deep and figure out what we're doing wrong and get better for next game. I'm disappointed with our line's effort. -3 and huge, biggest game of the year, so that can't happen. But I thought, guys were working tonight. I thought we were getting there, but we got a little bit more to give, and I thought in the third period we were getting there, and but at the same time we're chasing, and it's a little too late.
Okay, I'm gonna close that before it goes into advertise mode. So, all right. So I thought that was a good interview, honest interview from Braden Holtby there.
You mean James Neal?
Or James Neal? I'm sorry, I saw Braden Holtby on the screen. Yeah, from James Neal. And I quite honestly think he was willing to kind of talk about his flaws in that game. He brought up the -3 fact, which is what you brought up earlier, Ryan. Overall, I thought this was that was an outstanding comment to kind of make for him. And he needed to address the fact that he was -3. I thought that was necessary for that interview.
What I thought was interesting though, he didn't he mentioned his line, not himself. Like if I'm a player, if I'm James Neal, I'm saying I'm disappointed with my effort. Like I thought I could have done more. I'm not saying my line because I think that kind of implicates your line mates. So I didn't like that answer as much as probably you did, but I think it was a little damning. Hopefully the players don't look into it, and I don't think they will. But I was glad that he was honest with himself for sure, and glad he was honest with the media, like saying -3 can't happen. That's pretty honest and blunt. So I like that. It's a change of pace from what usually players say.
Yeah, I can understand the logic there of, he kind of threw his line under the bus instead of throwing himself under the bus. I can understand that. I quite honestly thought the rest of his answers were pretty good though.
Yes.
I that one answer was okay. I wouldn't say it was awful. I thought it was okay. It wasn't anything special. I just like the fact that he addressed the -3 stat. That means he's reading the stats. That means he's paying attention. But yeah, I can understand, throwing his line mates under the bus kind of mentality there. He seemed pretty calm and collected. He seemed frustrated. And I think that's good for him. That means he's going to come into the next game more driven. And specifically for James Neal. I don't know about the other players. I know specifically for James Neal. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty good interview.
I think what's going to happen next is I think they're going to do a line change.
Yeah, they need to.
I don't know if you want to get into that now or if
yeah,
you want to get into
let's talk about the future here. So we'll start to talk about what we think's going to happen, that kind of thing. That's what we're going to talk about right now. So, all right. So you wanna talk about line changes? Go ahead.
I think you have to at this point with a -3 coming back from Game 3. I think you have to change that lineup. I think you need to move Alex Tuch back up to the second line. And it looks like in daily faceoff that they have that there. So I think you would go to that lineup. So I think you move Alex Tuch up to that line because I noticed in Game 3 he wasn't on that line because he didn't have the -3 stat.
Yeah.
It was Eric Holla, James Neal, and David Perron that was on that line. And I just think Alex Tuch is a better second linesman than David Perron is.
Yeah, I agree. I think you move them. The other line change that I would make is, I know a lot of people like Ryan Reeves apparently for some reason, but I think Ryan Reeves is not benefiting a whole lot in this series, or he's not helping Vegas. I think potentially you think about pulling in a Thomas Tatar, and maybe pulling, because he actually did play in that Winnipeg series, and he played pretty well. He had a couple goals in that series.
He gives offensive power to a fourth, third line, so I could see that.
Yeah, so maybe not remove Ryan Reeves, but maybe put him in over someone else on third or fourth line, as mentioned before. I don't think there's a whole lot they can do defensively. There's no defensive changes I would really make. I think, quite honestly, it's a forwards issue. It's not a defenseman issue.
Yeah.
Because there's not much else they can do. Ryan Reeves. Go ahead.
From what I remember, Alex Tuch did well on the second line.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why the change happened to move him away from the second line.
Yeah, and I'm not really quite sure either. Maybe it was because they wanted a little bit of a bigger body to match up with that, with whatever line that they wanted him to match up with. He is a little bit of a bigger boy, and he's got some size to him. He also, if you saw in Game 3, there were a couple breakaways that he literally skated past all the defensemen of Washington, and he caused breakaways in Game 3. He just didn't convert. He stopped an icing. I mean, that he started from Vegas's blue line, skated through all 5 players to stop an icing, all 5 Capitals players to stop an icing. It was insane speed that we saw from him. So yeah, I'm not really quite sure why you remove him from that. Maybe pair him up with some other players that could get some offensive potential from him. I think one of the things that would give Vegas some more threat is to put him, maybe put him on the left wing because he's a right-handed player, and then maybe put someone in the setup, obviously, but put James Neal on the right boards there, so that way his left-hand shot is kind of more giving him a better angle at the net.
Well, that's what Daily Faceoff has, and I have to agree with them. I don't know why they changed it. It doesn't make sense, and maybe this is an updated lineup but I doubt it because they wouldn't give the lineup that early. So, I just don't see the change. I don't understand the mindset of it. I come from the mindset what got you there is the safe bet.
Yeah. Well, and I'm of the mindset of, granted, Vegas has size to them, but they're not going to win off of a hitting battle. And that's kind of where I say, where's Ryan Reeves fit into this? Bring Thomas Tatar has some speed to him. Maybe not, like I said, maybe you're not switching out Ryan Reeves for Thomas Tatar. Maybe you're keeping Ryan Reeves to play against Tom Wilson or someone who's hitting hard, Brooks Orpik, maybe something like that. But you definitely need Thomas. I think Thomas Tatar needs to be brought into the lineup, see how he plays, give him some speed, or he gives the lineup some speed and he gives some offensive firepower. I think he's a valid option. I'm not sure why he's not in that talk. The other thing that I would potentially think about doing is throwing during the course of the next game, quickly throwing line changes around. So, maybe throwing Jonathan Marchessault onto the third line randomly for a shift just to see how he does, and kind of throw Washington off of their game a little bit, and maybe see if he can score. Maybe a first or second line player on a third line can throw off the defense for whatever reason, and then stuff like that. I think that's stuff that Gerard Gallant needs to do in the next game.
Yeah, I would agree with. I agree that he has to change the lineup. I don't think you change your top line though. I don't. I see your argument. I want to agree with it, but like I say that we'll agree on that lineup changes are necessary because this ain't working.
Maybe not like rotate those two players or whatever, but just double shift Marchessault or something like that.
Yeah,
just to and keep one guy off for a shift. Just
I can see that.
And just to throw off Washington. That would be my suggestion. Maybe not.
Yeah.
You don't have to take a third line player and put him on the first line. I'm not saying that. But yeah, it doesn't have to be Marchessault. I picked a player that was easily known. But yeah, that would be my suggestion. Maybe try doing that. Try double shifting for one or two shifts or so, something like that. In terms of Washington, what do you think they got to do for the next game if they want to come out and win that game?
I would, if I'm coming into game 4, I expect lineup changes, so I got to be ready for that. Ready to match up with the right lines that I want. So my first period is, if I'm going to that first period and I'm Barry Trotz, I'm going into this. I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to see what line shifts that they're doing, and then I'll adapt game in period 2 and period 3. That's how I'm going into it.
Yeah, I kind of am of the mindset of you go in and you play safe. Excuse me. You play safe. You go for that first goal. The moment you get that first goal, then you start playing with some risk. So, and that's kind of how where I think Washington is actually doing it is they're playing risky for the first goal. The moment they get the first goal, then they're playing it the safe, and they're playing in the neutral zone. They're playing super defensive in the neutral zone and preventing Vegas from getting that goal. And I think that's what they're actually doing. So that style has worked, but I think Vegas will break through at some point.
Oh, I think so too. I don't think playing it safe is. Playing to defend a lead isn't the way to go.
Yeah.
It's not a good way to go.
Yeah, and I can say that for sure coming from a Rangers fan, because that was Alain Vigneault's whole entire system is get one goal and then defend the rest of the game, and it never worked. So, but yeah. All right, so let's now that we've kind of talked about what we think needs to happen for the next game, what do you think who's gonna win? We'll break it down here. So who's gonna win the next game in your opinion?
I think game 4 goes to Vegas with the lineup changes that I hope they make, and if they listen, if the coach does the right moves and say just shoot the puck, play it, keep it simple, stupid, just shoot the puck, good things will happen.
Yeah.
I think they win game 4. I think the players know what's at stake, and I think that they'll come out game 4, and I think Fleury will have some leadership value in this, and I think they'll pull out
the victory. All right.
Pull out the victory.
I don't know. I'm honestly on the fence about this one. I think part of me wants Vegas to win the next game, but I am quite honestly not sure after that last performance. And the performance of Washington was quite strong. I actually think Washington has a good chance of winning this next game. I'm gonna give the next game to Washington here. I think Washington wins the next game here, and then
Another part of my thought process was that if anyone's made choke job in art, it's been Washington.
Fair.
So I think a choke job is gonna happen, whether it be game 4 or game 5. I think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I could see that. I think here's what I'm gonna say. I'm leaning towards Washington right now in my head. I'm literally on the fence on this one. I've been pondering this for a whole day, trying to figure out who I think is going to win. I think Washington takes it. I think the motivation of Alexander Ovechkin and the motivation of the rest of the team from Washington, I think they push through. Here's the thing that I got to say. I think Vegas will make a strong push in the next game. And I think that it will definitely be a close game. That's what I think. And I think it'll be like a 1-goal game. If Vegas wins this next game, then it means a whole lot more for Vegas, and Vegas comes back and they're going to win the series probably. If you're Washington and you win this game, you win the series. That's kind of how I look at it. Normally I'm looking at game 5 to see who wins game 5. This is the game 5 of this series. I think this next game is important. Whoever wins this game is gonna win the cup. And so I gotta give. I think Washington is gonna win this next game. And so because of that, I think Washington has right now has the best chance of winning the cup compared to the out of the two teams. So, what is your opinion still that Vegas is gonna win?
Yeah, I still think. I mean, I don't. It's not that I think Vegas win. I don't trust Washington to win it, and their home play hasn't shown me a vote of confidence at all.
Yeah.
So I think they have a couple factors going against them, and I think Gerard Gallant will coach him enough and notify what they need to do to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, let me say this because I want to get this on record. I hope Vegas wins. I'm cheering a little bit more for Vegas. I'm not cheering for Washington really. I'm being honest with how the series is going. Now, granted, if Vegas gets all 4 lines or even 3 lines rolling, it's game over. Washington has 2 lines right now. I mean, they made it seem like they had 3, but they have 2. They had a couple lucky bounces here and there, and they really have. I mean, all Vegas has to do is they have to shut down Alexander Ovechkin, which is way harder than I'm making it sound. But do their best to shut down Alexander Ovechkin, shut down Evgeny Kuznetsov, and shut down players like TJ Oshie. Shut down TJ Oshie and you're good. Which, by the way, I was watching that power play. I have not seen TJ Oshie hit that shot in the slot when they're on the power play once. He's hit it like he's hit the post or like shot it way wide or whatever. You'd think if you're in that spot, you got to hit the net. So if I don't know. And granted, I haven't watched Washington all throughout the playoffs, so it's not like I've had the time to sit down and watch every single game. So if he has hit that, I'm sorry, but it's for the majority of the time he hasn't hit them. So anyway, but that being said, I think this game is the key game. Would you agree with that?
Oh, for sure. I think if you're Vegas, you definitely don't want to go down 3-1.
Yeah.
You can't win 3 straight.
Well, you can, but it's Vegas isn't the team to do that. I mean, there are very few teams in the league that I would say, yeah, you can do that, and one of them isn't Vegas. That they're not that one of those teams.
I could maybe say Pittsburgh Penguins, and that's about it. That I think could win 3 straight.
Out of current team matchups, I would probably say Pittsburgh and maybe LA. Maybe LA. LA used to be that team, but you know, they have a lot of the former players. But yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm not really sure I really consider Vegas that team. So I think this is the key matchup of the series. Now, granted, I hope Vegas wins the next game, like I said. And to be fair with how even this matchup is, I think it's actually going to be a good game. The commentators won't make you believe that it's an even matchup, but I think it's a pretty even matchup. I think the goaltenders are both strong. The defenses are relatively the same. They're both and then the offenses are both really strong. So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. I hope that Gerard Gallant gets his team together, like you said, and ends up just destroying, you know, any sort of doubt in Vegas players' minds, you know. But right now, as I see it, I got to give the edge to Washington for this next game. So yeah, let's go down the path of if Vegas wins really quick. So if Vegas wins the next game, how do you think it's still going to go to 7 games?
Yeah, I would say 7.
Okay.
I think it goes Vegas in 7, but if Capitals win, then I think it's Capitals in 5.
Yeah,
I think Vegas will be demoralized.
I think I would go Caps in 6. I think that would be my pick. But a 5 makes sense. I just, you know, I feel like with Vegas, their back's against the wall. I don't know. The Caps one is a little tough for me. That's a little bit of a tough one to predict. I think Vegas is definitely the easier one to predict, I think. I think if Vegas wins, it's Vegas in 6. That's my prediction.
I would love to see that, to see the Washington Capitals fans crying, and definitely seeing that red-painted bald guy crying. That would be a sight to see, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to go with I think as of right now, this is keep in mind for those of you listening, this is mid-series, so it's tough to say, but I think Washington pulls it out. This is not the series like we saw last year, which was Nashville and Pittsburgh, and it was a clear Pittsburgh win. Like, I thought Pittsburgh was the obvious choice in that series. Mm-hmm. I don't think this is that series. I think this is a little bit more topsy-turvy, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, all right, well, for those of you listening, you heard it here. Ryan thinks Vegas is still going to win. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Washington. Hoping Vegas wins, but leaning more towards Washington. So,
do you think the bigger question is, Vegas wins, do you think ESPN will actually give some love to hockey?
No. Well, they have, but the all the love that they give in are all the bad stuff. So like Evgeny Kuznetsov being injured and Tom Wilson throwing in a really egregious hit, like stuff like that. It's nothing spectacular from them.
Yeah.
Of course, they fired all the smart people who know anything about the game, so that's on them. But yeah, so that's our thoughts. Before I head out and before we end this, I want to give a little shout out to Ryan's podcast of Forsberg Winter Wonderland, correct?
Yes.
A Forsberg Winter Wonderland. It is his podcast. Ryan is an Avalanche fan, so he's going to be talking about the Avalanche. They're going to be starting here soon once the draft starts coming up, right? Yeah. So
and I want to see how free agency plays out. So I think July 1st is when we'll first re-up. Like we did the playoffs and we did that, but then After that, we kind of died off because our season ended. So I think we'll start it back up once free agency starts up and the draft happens.
Okay. So yeah, pay attention. July 1st, as he said, there's gonna be, he's gonna be talking about Avalanche stuff. So if you're into the Avalanche or anything like that, or just want to keep up in the news, please check out his podcast. And you said you have a couple guys basically.
Yeah, it's just it's two guys and a girl that mainly focus on it, but I try to get rotating analysts.
Yeah. So he's got a lot of guys and a girl to be with him. So yeah, go check him out. Check his content out. That's awesome. Just look for a Forsberg Winter Wonderland on YouTube and on SoundCloud.
Yep.
So yeah, feel free to check his stuff out. I'm hoping here soon. It's been tough to get him on, but my good friend Will has who is also part of the podcast, who Ryan also knows. I really want to get him on to kind of talk hockey. He's been quite busy, unfortunately, so we're gonna see if we can get him on after the series ends. And so yeah, so stay tuned for that. There's gonna be a podcast talking about the Stanley Cup Final after it ends and whatnot too. And then after that, I think we're just gonna go into free agency / draft. And yeah, so I'm gonna have to get people to help me out on that one because I'm better with watching people play. So I have a couple people who are better with the money issues.
A good site to get do research on is capfriendly.com.
Capfriendly.com.
Yeah.
All right.
Check that site out. They do a really good job. You can even be I haven't really worked around it, but you can even be like a GM for the team that you want to be and see how it works with what kind of contracts you can offer and stuff. So capfriendly.com is the way to go.
This is not a sponsored video for those of you watching.
No.
It's just all right, catfriendly.com. I'll check it out. But yeah, so that's a little sneak peek into the future here. Be talking about I think my biggest thing that I'll be able to talk about will be trades. So players that I've seen play and whatnot. I don't have as much knowledge watching some of the people who have been playing in the Swedish leagues or the Ontario Hockey League or anything like that. That's not what I do. I don't sit down and watch hockey all day. From at least from those leagues. So but I'll be able to talk.
Are you telling me you don't watch KHL? How do you? That's better than NHL hockey.
No, I don't. Speaking of KHL, Ilya Kovalchuk is set to come back over, most likely. And actually, Ryan let me know this. He's trying to come to the Islanders. So if you're an Islanders fan, well, first, boo.
Yeah.
And second of all, even more boo if you pick up Ilya Kovalchuk. I don't mind if you sign Tavares again, though. So anyway, but yeah, so we're gonna be talking about stuff like that. A little sneak peek of what we'll be talking about. Talking about players like Matthews and Carlson. Well, Matthews isn't really up for anything, but
James Van Riemsdyk.
James Van Riemsdyk, yeah. Thank you.
Tavares,
Carlson. I mean, the list goes on. We could talk about
Evander Kane, but he just signed a deal. So
yeah, he signed an 8-year deal with San Jose. But anyway, there's a little sneak peek of what you might get from us. So, or from me specifically, and Ryan if he decides to come on, and other people obviously if they decide to come on as well. So, but yeah, so it'll be at some point after the Stanley Cup Final. It probably won't. I don't know exactly when it'll be. Depends on the day. But I'm not really quite sure if it'll be the day after or not. So, but I will.
Do you know when we'll do the awards podcast?
whenever I'm gonna do the awards. That's a good point. The awards podcast, for those of you listening, will happen. Probably it'll happen after the awards have been announced.
Okay. And is that after the Stanley Cup is announced or over?
Yeah, the awards are usually after
Okay.
that. So, so after all the awards have been announced or put out or whatever, we'll talk about it. That way we can say, I think it should have been, Brock Besser who should have won this instead of Connor McDavid. I don't know. I don't know if those are actually people up for awards. I'm making that stuff
Brock
up.
Besser is and Connor McDavid is, but they're different, awarded for different awards.
That's what I assumed, but anyway, so that will be sometime after the Stanley Cup final as well. Probably going to be a separate podcast though, so just so you guys have a heads up. Anyway, that I know that ending was a little longer than what you guys wanted, so I'm going to end it here.
That was my fault.
No, it's all good. But you guys got a little bit of a sneak peek coming into the next set of videos here from me. So, that being said, a huge thank you to Ryan for this. And I know it's been a pleasure to talk hockey with you throughout the playoffs here, and it's been fun. So.
Do you want to do a game 6? Like if it goes to 7, do you want to do another podcast or no?
I'm just gonna let it. Well, I don't know. That's up in the air for those of you listening. Let me think about it.
Yeah, I was thinking about like it would be cool. I think it'd be cool to do one.
If it goes to game 7, maybe.
Okay.
If it goes to game 7, maybe I'll think about it. So that would be in between game 6 and game 7 because there's a day break in between that game, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah.
So yeah, that's for those of you listening. Anyway, well, I will end the podcast here because it definitely needs to be ended. Thank you all for tuning in. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and check out Forsberg Winter Wonderland on YouTube and SoundCloud. I'm your host, Joshua Kessner, and this has been the Captain and Center Ice podcast.